Hello, ladies and gentlemen, our lovely students in Coach Elliott's dance fitness class. This is Ms. Demke bringing today's lesson to you for covering our nutrition in health. Last week, we discussed cortisol and how that is a hormone, how it's released during times of stress, and having an imbalance with too high or too low of cortisol can impair our health overall. Today's lesson, we are going to be discussing the uses of caffeine. And when we happen to be stressed, it is best, so when our cortisol levels are high, it is best that we avoid caffeinated beverages, which was recommended in the previous lesson. So today I want us to look into why is caffeine, why do we have to take precautions with the chemical caffeine, because we know that there are some great benefits to using it that does serve a purpose, but we also want to be informed to its effects with our bodies. So the purpose of this lesson is to help you become an informed consumer, to help you make the best decisions when it comes to your health and body. And I absolutely love this quote, and I'll repeat it multiple times. Just as in class, when we say you have one life, your body is the only thing that you have control of. And basically, this says your body is the biggest investment that you will ever make in your life. Don't abuse it. So this is the one body we have. This is the one life we get. And it's up to us to how we decide how we're going to treat it. Caffeine being one of those substances that can benefit and be abused with our body. So let's look at this. What are some of the benefits of using caffeine? I want you guys to think about that. When you use caffeine or when you take a product that has caffeine in it, why do you do it? What things do you experience? Why do you like to take caffeine? So let's look here. It gives us energy. I love it when I'm having a down day, I'm tired, I want to have some energy, I'm going to have some caffeine. Mental focus and alertness. I definitely like that, especially in classes. If I want to be able to pay attention to my professor, maybe I need a little caffeine in my brain. Improves physical performance. This is a great one. Taking pre-workout so I can go hard at the gym or go hard with the workout is great. Enhances weight loss. In a lot of diet pills, they actually add caffeine for multiple purposes because it is an appetite suppressant and it helps. It's a diuretic, which means that it pulls water out from the tissues in your body and it secretes it into your urinary system. So you actually pee a lot more with caffeine. So that can also cause water weight loss. And you get the added benefit of giving you energy, so you want to go exercise. So they advertise caffeine as a weight loss product. Something to keep in mind. You may hear, oh, coffee is good for you. It has great benefits. Green tea is an antioxidant, and so they're going to help reduce risk of getting cancer. I want to clarify that it is not the caffeine substance found in those products that give the benefit of, say, antioxidants or the other health benefits. These food sources that contain caffeine have other health benefits, but it's not the caffeine that's found in them. So I want to clarify, caffeine is an isolated substance, but it's not adding to the health benefits of these food sources. On the other hand, let's look at some of the concerns of why we should not be using caffeine or be cautious. Dehydration. I just mentioned that caffeine is a diuretic, which means it pulls the water from your tissues. So it can cause dehydration, and that is a concern. Heart complications. We all, I'm sure, are familiar with the heart fluttering when we've had too much caffeine. So it can cause arrhythmias, irregular heartbeats. That's what an arrhythmia is. Anxiety, so stress, insomnia, which means lack of sleep or difficulty sleeping. The jitters. I personally do not like shaking, but caffeine can cause your muscles to tremor. Overdose. This is a huge concern because overdose can potentially lead to death. There was a case a couple of years ago, back in 2018, where a teenager happened to have a cardiac arrhythmia or a heart attack and died from a caffeine overdose. Let me clarify based on research, just because I don't want you guys to freak out, oh, I don't want to die if I drink caffeine. No, there's a lot of things surrounding overdose with caffeine. A couple things that can cause risk factors to being more sensitive to overdose is one, your weight. So how much do you weigh? That's going to affect if the caffeine affects you more. How your body metabolizes or secretes the caffeine out from your body. So how quickly does the caffeine leave your body? Essentially looking at the time frame. So did you have just caffeine in the morning and at night, or did you all have that caffeine in 1 hour? This particular case of this teenager, a young man, he consumed 2 energy drinks and a cup of coffee within, I think, a 2 or 3 hour span. So he had high levels of caffeine in his blood to cause cardiac arrest. So I want you guys to be informed and educated. Okay, if I am going to have 2 energy drinks and a coffee all in the same day, maybe I should span it out throughout the day so that I'm not overworking my heart. So that's why we need to stay informed and be educated to how to best use these products so that we don't end up overdosing. The easiest way to potentially overdose with caffeine is through taking it in powdered forms, such as pre-workouts or caffeine pills, just because it's not filling us up. It's not really tied to a food. And some of those pills are 100 milligrams. So if you take 3 of those all at the same time, you're adding a high risk to yourself and putting a lot of strain on your heart. And pills you don't feel right away, so you think, oh, I need more caffeine, because it takes the digestive system time to break down that pill and absorb the caffeine. So someone may take a pill and say, oh, it's not working, the caffeine hasn't kicked in, and so 30 minutes later they take a second one and they're like, oh yeah, this feels good, and they want a bigger buzz from it. They take a third one. Oh my goodness, that's really taxing the body and putting yourself at high risk. So this is why we are educating you, and I'm sharing this information with you so that you can make the best decision for yourself. So be careful. Next. It didn't go. Let's see. Addiction and dependency. It is a chemical that affects your brain and can cause dependency. We'll go into more depth with that a little bit later. And then, because it is a form of addiction, it also has withdrawal symptoms, which include headaches, drowsiness, irritability, nervousness, dizziness, difficulty concentrating, constipation, nausea, etc., etc., etc. The list goes on. I only listed a few very common symptoms, but there are a lot more other than what's just listed here. I just didn't want to overwhelm you guys. All right, so what does the research have to say about caffeine consumption? With brain development being impaired in teens, now this has been going over a few studies. So the first study, preliminarily, in the beginning stages, I should say, was tested on rats, and then they later on tested with children and adolescents to see that caffeine interrupts sleeping patterns, and with that interruption, with the sleep during that time that our brain is growing, It impairs that, and so it delays brain development. So the research, not mine, the research says that brain development can be impaired from caffeine use. Next, dependency and what leads to addiction. Caffeine, it attaches to synapses in our brain. This is what causes us to be awake and alert and get rid of brain fog. Well, what happens is that the caffeine attaches to receptors on our neurons, which normally these receptors on our brain neurons, the synapse, they're there for other chemicals in our brain to attach and to cause the neuron to kind of shut off, so it makes us tired. That's what its normal function is, and that's set up so that when we're mentally fatigued or our body is tired, the body has that mechanism, that way to cause us to get drowsy. So that's what the synapse is meant for. Now, what caffeine does is that it goes in and it blocks that part on the brain neuron and says, no, you're not going to be sleepy today. I'm going to block you from getting the brain tired. So the brain notices, and when caffeine is there, that, hey, I'm supposed to be getting sleepy, but I'm not getting sleepy. So what are we going to do? We're going to grow more receptors on the neuron to be available for the sleepy chemical to come in and attach to calm the brain down. This is what's called as desensitizing the brain. What that translates to is that caffeine, you can start to add a little bit of quantities of caffeine. I'll have a soda a day. After a week, I don't feel as awake because the brain grew new receptors for the tired chemicals to come in. Well, then the caffeine can't block those guys, and so the brain starts to get tired again. All right, this soda's not doing anything more. I'm going to drink 2 sodas. Again, the body adapts. So it creates this dependency. All of a sudden, I need more to stay awake. And when you take that caffeine away, when you decide I'm going to quit, you're going to experience even greater fatigue because the body's used to having to produce and make so much of that tired chemical to flood the brain, to get the brain to be tired and shut down, that all of a sudden the brain is it's like drowning in these chemicals to make you tired. So all of a sudden you're even more tired than before you started the caffeine. And you're like, man, why am I just tired all the time? And then you need that caffeine to wake you up. So it starts this vicious cycle of needing that caffeine in order to be awake. So just a little bit of explanation there of why it's an addiction and how you become dependent and why it's so hard to get rid of caffeine and going through with withdrawal. Next, sleep deprivation. Like I mentioned before, it interrupts your sleep patterns. Best to consume it not in the afternoon or the evening time so that it's not keeping you awake when your brain is supposed to be asleep. We already discussed hormonal imbalance, how it increases your stress hormone, cortisol. And when your cortisol is in charge, it's the king of the throne and it's going to command all your other hormones. Overdose, we already discussed. Increased chances to become injured during physical activity. This one is a little interesting. Basically, when you have more energy, you don't want to stop until you're tired. You go to the gym, you're like, oh man, I'm going to push myself an hour. My muscles aren't going to feel fatigued because I have caffeine pumping through my veins. Well, that means, the body's protection is, hey, when you get tired, you're supposed to stop. It's fatigue. You want to stop. Well, caffeine overrules that. So even when you're tired, you keep pushing the muscle and the tendons. And if the muscle and tendons aren't used to that load and strain, you can actually cause damage to those muscle tissues and your tendons. So it can potentially lead to injury And on top of all of this, the caffeine that we consume usually is found in products that contain high amounts of sugar. So we are getting a ton more of calories in our diet that normally we wouldn't be consuming, and these calories aren't filling. In a sense, they're not nutritional calories to help support our body. So people, research says, and you can Google this if you like, the research says that people who consume, even though it's an appetite depressant, it's going to depress your appetite and you can potentially lose the weight. People who consume caffeine tend to consume 200 more calories than those who didn't have the caffeine in the day. So that's probably just coming from the sugars that are found in those beverages, that it wouldn't help you in your weight loss goals, is what I'm trying to say, because you're getting those extra calories. Real quick here, I wanted to insert a depiction of what I was talking about for the receptors in your brain, and like what causes dependency and our brains to become sensitive or desensitized to caffeine. So here's a great cartoon depiction of that chemical, of how the adenosine is supposed to attach to receptors in your brain to help you get tired, and to when your body's tired, to help you get sleepy. And then what happens when caffeine interferes with that? And so the caffeine gets in the way and adenosine can attach, and the brain ends up growing more of these. So I just wanted to give you guys a visual, and quickly I wanted to add, what else could we do in place of caffeine? Because if we know caffeine is a stimulant, wakes up our brain, and it's the only way we know how to wake up our brains, well, what are some alternatives to not taking caffeine and still wake up our brain? Some research has shown that in the morning, when you wake up, your body is very dehydrated. So what are we going to do with our body? Well, the brain needs blood to be able to carry chemicals and nutrients to the brain to function. Well, if the blood is super thick, it's not getting more nutrients there. So first thing in the morning, drink some water. Heck, add some electrolytes to that water, because then we're feeding our brain with minerals, things that it needs to function properly. So there's a lot of ways to add electrolytes to your water. You guys can research that to see what options you would like to try first. And then exercise. Get blood pumping to that brain. Exercise is a great way. So simply just standing up and wiggling around a little bit, or moving the arms, do a couple jumping jacks. It's not like you have to go work out for 5 or 20 minutes. Simply just a couple minutes, 30 seconds to a minute, get the blood pumping to your brain. That'll also help wake you up. And sleep, you guys. Get enough sleep and take care of your bodies that way. There are, supplements that could probably help you sleep too, but do everything according to your doctor, what your doctor recommends, and make sure you research it out thoroughly before you do anything along those lines, okay? But for sure, drink your water and exercise. Those are sure recommendations to help you wake up your brain. All right, let's take a look at some products then and compare them. See how this is going to affect our bodies. We already know that it's not safe in large quantities. So let's see, how much does it take to potentially be at risk? So the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that adolescents do not consume more than 100 milligrams of caffeine a day. So let's see, what does 100 milligrams look like? Here is a caffeine poster, which I found online. I thought it was super helpful. It even has the chemical structure of caffeine. I thought that was cute. All right, so starting from the bottom in the green area, Coca-Cola is probably around 30 to 40 milligrams. So if you have one Coke, you're under your limit of 100. Looking at Mountain Dew, it's a little bit over 50. It's probably 55 or 60 milligrams. So if you have one Mountain Dew, you don't want to have another because that puts you over 100. We look at Red Bull and AMP. Those are probably close to 70 and 80 milligrams. So just one energy drink. But wait a minute, there's other energy drinks above that 100 mark. Rockstar, Monster are all above 150. Starbucks, Can, Full Throttle, those are probably all around 140. On the left-hand side, let's take a look at coffee. Black coffee, yeah, a cup of coffee, it's going to be under 100. But when you start to look at purchased coffee, such as from McDonald's, where it's someone else is making it for you, or even Starbucks, that even ranges from 140 all the way to 260 milligrams in just one cup of coffee. So when you hear that recommendation, oh, a cup of coffee is 100 milligrams, well, it really depends on who's preparing that coffee for you to see the caffeine content. Same goes for the energy drinks. Each drink you see, they're not all set at 150. They each vary. Pre-workout powders, they range anywhere from 100 milligrams to 300 milligrams. Personally, when I use pre-workout powder, I can only fill up that powder to maybe less than a fourth of the scoop because it just, like I said, I'm sensitive to caffeine. So be aware of the nutritional information, the label on the back, and read how much content caffeine is in there because if you want to do one scoop, a full scoop, that would put me over the top. You want to know how much you're dosing yourself. Something else to look at on this lovely poster, let me go in and circle it. Maybe it won't circle for me. Oh, that's too bad. Let me see if I can highlight it here. So, highlighting. Yes, this works. The half-life of caffeine, and I'll explain what this is approximately 4.9 hours in the body. So this is the time for the body to eliminate half of the caffeine. It takes about 5 hours. So if you had a Mountain Dew at 60 milligrams, it's going to take about 5 hours for the 60 milligram in your blood, those milligrams, to go down to 30 milligrams. So if you're going to time when you're going to be consuming caffeine throughout the day, it's good to know that it takes about 5 hours to reduce it to half. So I would not recommend taking or drinking a caffeinated beverage at 11 o'clock and then by 3 o'clock thinking, oh, I'm okay to do another one. It's only been 4 hours. So keep that in mind. I thought that was interesting. Food for thought, even though the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that adolescents only take up to 100 milligrams a day, bottom line, this is what they say. The American Academy of Pediatrics states that caffeine and other stimulant substances contained in energy drinks have no place in the diet of children and adolescents. And that comes straight from cdc.gov website. So I want you guys to think about that and why they place these limits. So, do you believe caffeine is safe to consume? Why or why not? Has purposes. Is it something that's safe? I found this resource online, Maximum Caffeine Calculator, and I posted the link here, caffeineinformer.com/caffeine safe limit. I mentioned earlier that each body is different. We metabolize that caffeine at different rates based on our weight. And what this maximum caffeine calculator is, what it does is that it asks you to input your weight. So you put in your weight, and then it generates a number that says, hey, this is the max you should consume in a day. The upper limit placed on adults by the CDC is 400 milligrams. For me, the maximum caffeine calculator recommended that my maximum is 300 milligrams. So even looking at the upper limit that's provided by the CDC, Center of Disease Control, I shouldn't be anywhere near 400 milligrams. I should be staying in the 300 limit if I so choose to drink that much or have that much caffeine in a day. Like I mentioned before, my body is very sensitive to caffeine. I can barely have 30 milligrams and I already get the jitters. So never in my life would I ever consume around 300 milligrams, but it's good to know for yourself what should be your max so that you don't go anywhere near reaching an overdose. Just protect your heart, protect your hormones, and not feel so stressed or overwhelm your brain even. Coming to a close here, I want you guys to honestly think to yourself how you are going to choose to use caffeine in your life. You are you. You make your own decisions for you and your life. It's your body. I'm not a person who likes to be extreme on anything. I don't cut caffeine out of my life entirely, nor do I consume caffeine every single day. That's really hard on the body. My recommendations based on the research is to be moderate in your use and consumption. So, when do you think it's appropriate to use caffeine? When are you going to choose to forego using it and say, no, I'm just going to push through it today without caffeine? These are decisions to really think about because you guys are preparing to become adults. I'm sure you guys are already using caffeine on a regular basis. And ultimately, you need to stay informed and educated on what you're putting into your bodies and how it's going to affect you. With that being said, I hope you guys found value from this information. Please make sure to go out and do your own research on what we discussed today so that you can be, an educated decision maker throughout your life and you can decide what's best for you. So thank you so much for hearing me out and participating. I hope you guys can do what's best to stay healthy, and I hope you have a blessed day.